Big day, Kirk.
I feel like
Big day.
there should be confetti and balloons, maybe a band playing for us.
Lisa asked if she should go out and get balloons while we're recording.
Now, we're not 100% positive, but we're like 97% positive on this fact.
There's some conflicting data.
It's our 500th episode.
Yes.
Woo!
Made
How
it.
do you feel? Do you feel like a changed man, Brakken?
I feel like a different man,
Oh
for
yeah.
sure.
Explain.
There's something about speaking your thoughts out loud, like to an audience multiple times per week for years on end, that forces you to reevaluate a lot of things that I don't know if I'd normally reevaluate. And so my guess is that probably outside of the 5-year stretch from graduating high school to graduating college, this has probably been the 5-year stretch where I have evolved the most in my thoughts and views of things.
Does this expand beyond running? Is that what you're speaking of?
No, I
Or
think,
no?
well, I
In
mean,
this
yes,
context.
because running it's like a spider web that's connected to every single thing in my life. And part of it is the speaking out loud the whole time and being forced to think about and occasionally defend what you believe. And the other half is being surrounded constantly by really impressive people who have their own beliefs in your pond that keep introducing new things to you or make you reevaluate what you think you believe and why. You're one of them, obviously. You're the most prominent one for me because we interact the most out of any other person
Mhm.
other than my family. So this 5 years stretch has changed me more than probably anything other than high school to college.
Well, it's interesting because, like, not that we go through the motions, let's say, of running and training, but most of us go through the motions most of the time. And starting this podcast has forced us to peek behind like our own curtains and understand the what and the why and force us to be introspective and then grow. And I think I've made advancements in the way I think about literally running mostly way beyond anything I've done in the previous years. And it's all because like we're forced to chat it out. We are forced, it's a privileged position to dissect and analyze. And it's become like, I think, truly part of my DNA now, like this whole running thing. Like it's
Yeah.
my identifier, runner, coach, let's call it run educator. And it was not that before we started this, even close. It was one of the things on my resume, but now it's consuming it. And it feels like a very privileged position to be in. I didn't know that's how I'd feel after this long.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where people message us like, thank you, you have changed this, or I disagree with you on this, or you have blank, but we have all those same things constantly as well. We get done with interviewing someone and think, I was never intrigued by that, and now I am. Or I'm
Mhm.
second guessing something I held firmly in my mind, or that person gave me confidence in what I already believe. But it's happening to us constantly as well, which
Mhm.
is not something we set out to educate, maybe arrogantly, and did not
Speak for
understand at
yourself.
all. Yeah, speak for myself. Didn't understand at all the amount that would come towards us as well.
What is amusing to me about um, most of the episodes we do, in particular the Training Tuesdays or when it's just you and I, is we will say, let's give our opinion on strength training or let's talk about lactate threshold. And I am not even exactly sure how I feel about it or what is important to me until we start dissecting, and we always get there, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know, but we end up cornering ourselves into what we actually are passionate about, and it strips us down to our true beliefs. And I don't even know that where we're gonna go sometimes with these episodes until we talk it out. And then we realize what the fundamental important things are. And I think having that opportunity to do so has been pretty unveiling to me. But we've
Mhm.
mentioned before how sometimes like we're gonna chat this topic out and see how we get there or where we go, and we don't always know and we don't always have a plan. And who do you get to do this with on a regular basis? Those of you listening, it's very rare to have a relationship where you can dissect and talk, and we bring life into this and feelings and all of that. But what surprises me is just the fact that sometimes I don't even know what the core of this is for me on a particular subject until we actually get into the conversation. And I find that's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
You ever find
So
that?
I do, and I find it interesting to look at old episodes from time to time because someone will link something that people will share in their stories. One second. Sorry, yesterday I had to cancel meetings because my voice was almost gone and I wanted it for today. So I'm just on the edge of losing it or not today. So I may be stopping to cough a lot and clear my throat.
How have the turns have tabled, as they say? I am usually the sick one, and you have been on a run lately. You've
It's
had a tough January.
it feels like I'm being pranked at this point. We are recording on February 6th. I was Lisa got sick leading up to Christmas, but it was like half sick. It was like a half a
Mm,
norovirus is what it felt like. And then on Christmas Day, I threw up for the first time. And since then, every single day from December 25th through now February 6th, someone in our house has been on antibiotics. Someone
mm.
has been actively sick and someone has been recovering and or preparing to get sick if we look back on the timeline. Every single day. Coming up on 6 weeks.
Yeah, you
We're
need
just
that third
passing it
paper
around
bucket.
like a hot potato.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling well
Yeah.
enough to record our 500, but you were saying something, and then I
Yeah.
think you interrupted yourself with a
And I
coffee
don't know
fit.
what I was saying, so brain fog has been a real issue with me for the past like
You
6
went
days.
past, you went back through the last 500 episodes and something.
Yeah, so looking back over this time scale, the 5 years has been a very like impactful timeline for me in my life. Uh, High school was 4 years, obviously. That's a huge transformation time for an individual. College was 5 years, but I spent 1 year trying to pursue baseball. So I didn't pursue anything in college longer than what we've done here. And then I taught for the first 4 years out of college and then switched. And from the time we bought our first home to the time we bought this home, we moved every 2.5. We didn't make it farther than 2.5 years in any one location. So there has not been a house, a sport, a pursuit, other or relationship like of where I'm pouring myself into it other than Lisa and our kids now that they're older than 5 that has
Mhm,
been a longer pursuit in my life than this uninterrupted. So even like OCR when I got out, I spent the first 4 years doing it as a part-time job. And then I moved out to Colorado and went all in on it for 3.5 years,
mhm.
and then moved back home and kind of transitioned out. So this pursuit of the podcast and this pouring ourselves into this is outside of Lisa and the kids, really the second longest uninterrupted pursuit of anything in my life.
Huh. How long have you been with Lisa? How close is this?
Uh, Marriage, 14 years, but we were together for 3 years prior.
This would be my third longest, unfortunately. So I have one other. I started my business back in 2010 and been pushing that
Well,
pretty
that's not
hard. So I'm going.
unfortunate.
Well, I know, but I'm going on. I'll have my 15-year anniversary, which is wild this
It
year on
is.
that front. And then Jess and I met in 2017. So if I'm mathing correctly, that's 8 years ish. And then this would be 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of that to be said, we have taken so much from this, and not everyone has been with us from the beginning. Some people have, but even like we sometimes are like, hey, no, which guest said that? And then we'll think back, then I'll think about the episode, and I'll have completely forgotten something that was important. So I started going back through our episodes and jotting down, taking notes on things that we should be remembering. So I titled this note 500 episodes of reminders. And spoiler alert, we do not have 500 episodes of reminders. I had to start limiting myself, and I've cut it down to 20 reminders from the first 100 episodes. We may have to do a follow up on this, but we simply can't fit it all. But what I was trying to
Mhm.
do is come up with reminders of things that we may not preach every single day on here. Some things we do, but we forgot why we started doing it, or people may not have been there when we picked it up. So I want people to have maybe an episode to go back and re-listen to, or just a reminder in their training or their life of some point that a guest made. None of this is us. This is all guests. Wisdom, intelligence, mistakes, whatever that guests have imparted upon this podcast that we need to be reminded of.
You know what? I think I could go back to the beginning, every guest interview.
Yeah,
I think we could go one by one and I could pick out a part of that conversation that stood out to me, or at least the
definitely.
general sentiment or theme when the conversation was over, which is really interesting. I'm already going all the way back to the very beginning ones with, I think our first 2 episodes were like Hobie Call, Carrie Tollefson. From
Yep.
there, I don't remember exactly where we went, but I could pick out pretty much the highlight points still to this day. Because when you have the real conversation with somebody, you look them in the eye, at least through the computer, it sticks.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious. So I've not done this. These are your takeaways that jumped out at you, and I know you reduced the list down. My question for you is: so it's exclusively guest
Yep.
interviews, which is great. And did you make it all the way to current time, are these from way back in the archives?
I started with episode 1 and moved forward in time. So this is from the first 100. I stopped at that point, and we'll see what happens with this episode. It's like a clip episode. You see it on shows. It's kind of lazy and a cop out, but you're like tearing up by the end of it.
Oh, you plan on making people cry? Are you
No,
crying? Yeah, it's
I'll
okay to
tear up
cry.
simply from coughing up phlegm today at some point.
We've had guests on our episodes cry, but have we cried on here? I don't know if we have.
I don't know.
Maybe I'll try to make you cry today.
You ever want me to cry, just record an episode while I'm running an ultra or watching the end of Gladiator.
That's how it works.
That's all it takes.
Okay, so these are from the first 100
Yep.
guest episodes. All right, and I'm very curious to see what you pick here. I'm curious what step jumped out at you.
Well, and this is the issue, right? It can't be all encompassing. Every single episode had at least one. We could have multiple. This is just something that I think people need to be reminded of. And at the very least, it starts you down the rabbit hole of maybe exploring some of these ideas, some of these guests, or even our old episodes.
You ever have somebody, I've had a few over let's say in the last year, who had said, "Hey, I found your podcast recently," and I had to go back and start at the beginning because I'm caught up, and then they start back. And I had somebody who found us and then said, "No, I'm not listening to recent episodes. I want to do this in order and not muddy the waters." And somebody was like, they're like 3 years late to the game, but I sure hope you knocked it out of the park at your SoCal Spartan race. I was like, that was like January of 2022 or 2023. I'm like, yeah, it was 3 years ago and I did. But anyways, I think that's always funny when people are way behind but committed to sequential order. That's
Two things about
fantastic.
that. First is the best one of those I got is someone reached out and said, "I'm so sorry to hear about your second knee surgery. I was just so rooting that you were back on track." I was like, "Oh man, hey, spoiler alert, there's another surgery coming." I don't want to ruin season 4 for you. But, so yeah, they were like 4 years behind. But the other interesting thing for me, which is not exciting interesting, is that whenever I go back and rewatch or re-listen to anything that's like professionally done, you realize how rough season 1 is from a lot of things. Even if that you can tell like they're going to be good and the writing is going to find itself, things are a little herky jerky in season 1, and the cameras aren't good, and the makeup's bad, and the acting's a little off, and we are absolutely guilty of that. So I always hope people have a reason to get back to present time, because if they start right now with episode 1, I don't know if we keep them on the hook.
I don't know. Maybe there's some out there that are listening to this, but also are new listeners and have gone back to the beginning. I'd be curious. But all right. So why don't we kick this thing off then? Let's start as far back. Can we start as far back in time as possible? Is that what we'll do?
You want to go? You want to go sequentially?
I don't know. Do you have it listed out sequentially? Can we do that?
I did, and then I randomized it because I didn't want people to be upset or weird that we didn't pick something from their episode, because we might come back and hit it in the future.
Okay. Well, however you want then.
Okay. I want to start with Adam Buck.
Oh, Adam Buck, Stokebirds.
Stokebirds. Now, I could have just said Stokebirds and we could have talked about that, but I decided to go with trail etiquette because I learned something from Adam Buck about trail etiquette, which was that I'm using them wrong. And I would have considered myself a running trail connoisseur, and I was wrong. So, how to approach trails when they are wet.
Okay. Do you want to continue?
Nah, yeah, I mean, you pick it up from there, right? Let's, what do you
Yeah,
remember of
speaking of
that?
speaking of Adam, I don't know if Adam, I hope you listen. He's not putting in a lot of miles. He's been speaking of being sick, he's been knocked out. I still
Oh,
coach Adam. We still work together, and he's going on like 4 weeks of like just struggling. So Adam, if you're listening, let's get back on track, brother. He's on like his second rounds of antibiotics. And
ugh,
anyways, Adam Buck owns the company Pathfinder Trails. They're based here out of the Twin Cities. He's a buddy of mine, and I've coached him now for like 4 or 5 years. And he's actually a monster. But, anyways, Adam has worked really hard to build his trail building company. He's built trails all over the United States. They have build crews still growing. And we had him on as a guest quite a while ago. We've had him on once or maybe twice now. I think twice, if I'm not mistaken.
twice, I think.
Yeah, but we had a trail etiquette. It ended up that way with, I think, our first conversation with Adam, and
Yeah.
all the things that you never think about when you park at the trailhead, step out your door, put on your shoes, and go. We just don't cross a normal person's mind, and we spend a lot of time on the trails. I don't know the one thing that stood out to you that you did not know, though.
Okay, so I have two things. The first was the general idea of when should I or should I not run trails? And
Yep,
the idea is that if you leave a noticeable footprint behind, you don't need to be on the trail that day. Now you can, understanding your ecosystem, does it absorb it well? Will it come back well? Will it erode poorly? That kind of thing. But if you go through and you splatter something and you leave a big firm imprint, then that's a day that you don't need to be on the trail. And that was never on my mind as a decision maker. But the second and the most important was when your trail is muddy or has standing water on it, don't leave the trail and go around. Either
correct.
stay off the trail or go directly through the worst part of it, which was the exact opposite of how I, for my entire life, approach trails.
Yeah, I remember that point distinctly of the conversation because that just erodes the edges of the trail and eventually the integrity of the whole system falls apart when you get low spots in particular.
Hmm.
That trail expands due to people going around and then there is maintenance that needs to be done. I think the biggest takeaway from that episode was the complexity of designing and building the trail system, what's actually involved and taken into consideration, especially with the erosion factor, and especially when hills are involved and you're on hilly terrain. You think it's as simple as like just building a trail, and it's a very, very complex and nuanced process, especially for longevity. Anybody can build a trail somewhere, but to build a trail somewhere, the money, resources, and time to make sure that trail stays the way it was originally intended to is
Hmm.
far more complex than I ever could have imagined and takes a lot of thought and architecture, really.
Yeah. As a runner, when I looked at trails or looked at untrailed areas and thought of what I would do, I approached it always from a running standpoint. What would I enjoy? What would maximize the distance I could cover or the vert? And I didn't realize how large a percentage of trail building is water management,
Hmm.
water flow prevention, enhancement, like just irrigation problems solved by the trail, avoiding water going where you don't want it to go in the future, building the trail with water in mind. And so every time you skirt the trail, you compact something. And if that something is wet, it's going to eventually change where the water leaves the trail and how it leaves the trail, and it will destroy it. And so he actually said, we'd rather have you run straight through the puddle and make the rut worse than go off the trail and give the water a new place to settle low. And I always used to think I was doing a good thing by not eroding the trail I was running on, and I wasn't helping the problem. So that was a huge learning point for me.
That's good OCR training. Go right through the mud.
I guess so.
Chalk it up as purposeful training. I remember one of the other things that stood out to me is how pricey some of these builds are
Oh my goodness.
and the cost it can, like the trails, like your taxpayer dollars or a organization, or some of these are private trails, like the heavy machinery that comes in, some of the foundation that's laid underneath the trail that your foot strikes, like the structure of the trail and the topography needs to be changed, and then just the man hours and the step-by-step process to ensure it's done right, from clearing of the trees to impacting the landscape the least amount possible while still giving the user a great experience. So not destroying land to put a trail in there. It's wildly
Yeah.
expensive, wildly expensive. So it's like you should just very much value and appreciate and respect the fact that we even have these to go on, and keep them in good shape. I agree. We should have him on again.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fun to talk to.
He's a guy I feel like could be a reoccurring guest, and we'd never exhaust what we can use his knowledge and personality for.
Yeah, he just needs to get on the right side of the earth again, and then we'll have him on.
All right. We are going, I can't say in the opposite direction, but certainly perpendicular to that. Episode number 16, we talked to Steve Hammond.
Mm.
A lot of great takeaways from him, but what I'm going to go to right now is gut training.
Okay.
Training your gut to ingest calories before or during a run. And this is something that, as the ultra scene becomes more and more popular, we run into more and more frequently, which is athletes all have to find how do they fuel. And the problem is almost always, how can I take more in without causing a problem? The problem is very rarely, I'm so good at fueling, I don't even know what my best option is because I can handle anything.
So let's go back. Steve Hammond, Spartan Race course director, no longer with the company. Fantastic accent, fantastic guy. I don't know what he's up to recently. And
Yeah.
I remember we had Steve Hammond on, and I believe we chatted because he ran mileage the day of the month.
Yep. Ran the month in mileage.
So he ran the month in mileage. And so we talked a lot about that last week where you're running, back to back 25, then 26 until you get the point till he ran 31 miles. And we talked about the eating and how he fueled himself for this and the recovery between efforts and getting there. And I think he did this as a jump start. Like his training wasn't necessarily going fantastically, but it became, of course, a pursuit of endurance and that final week in particular. And that's where we talked about the food and the intake and what his strategy and his plan was, if I recall correctly.
Yep. And just for the listener that didn't listen, that means on the first of the month, you run 1 mile, the second 2 mile, on the third 3 miles, all the way up to 31 on the 31st. So that final month, you're running like well over 150 miles, like 170 some miles. I don't know what the math is. I'm not going to bother doing that. If you've been with us for 500 episodes, it won't help if I guess or not what the math is. So it's just a huge amount of miles, especially as it builds. And fueling that for a race is one thing where you can just get sugar in and then pay the consequences later. But doing it on back to back to back to back to back to back days means that he had to get as many real calories in as possible. And he still had to live his normal life. It's not like he was traveling to and from a race and had a couple days off work. He was doing his normal life, raising kids. He had to be available. So he had to fuel really well. And he wasn't someone who was good at it. And he just forced it. And in 1 month, really probably in 2 weeks, is where the prime gut training time came from. Probably most of it in a week and a half. He learned to be bulletproof in his gut, where he was just picking up sandwiches from delis in the middle of his run and consuming them. He went from not being able to eat before a run to being able to eat in the middle of a run in 2 weeks. So my takeaway was that gut training can happen, and the process is shorter than you think it is if you're willing to commit to it.
And something to preface from that conversation. Now, Steve Hammond is not like an ultra runner by nature. I just pulled up his Strava, and his biggest week in the last 3 months is 16 miles of running. It seems he puts a lot of stuff on here, his Nordic skiing, his running. I think he logs most everything. So this wasn't a guy that had years. Yes, he's done some longer stuff and been a fairly consistent runner in general. But I mean, his biggest week is 16 miles, according to his Strava, and he was running this volume. So this was new to him, point being. And basically, he just showed up and did it and didn't give him. I need to fuel. It's going in one way or another. My body will adapt one way or another. And if I recall, yeah, there was bakery stops. He'd stop at the sandwich shop. He would literally take his break at 10 miles, eat the sandwich, plod along, work himself back into pace, get up to running. Then he would do his next thing. And I don't ever remember him saying he struggled a ton with it, but I could be wrong.
He was full and bloated and achy early, and then he adapted. He was a guy, I believe, that didn't really eat breakfast before runs and would have to get up really early before a race if he wanted to. He got to the point on the last day where he was grabbing food and eating his breakfast during mile 1. So obviously he wasn't running fast. He's running 170 some miles that week. He's not going to run them fast. But the process is there. Gut training can happen. I shouldn't say no one. There are medical issues that will prevent you from getting great at this, but you can do it if you commit to doing it. And that's a good reminder. Most of us that run ultras really don't gut train the way you should.
Thing I took away from that episode is just getting to know Steve, because we didn't know Steve on like a background personal
Yeah.
level, and just really enjoyable hearing his stories about wasn't he a guide, like a hike guide and a raft guide?
Graft guide. Yeah.
And he's just a kind of an outdoor dirtball, which is a compliment. Like the ones who just live outdoors for adventure constantly, and how he found Spartan Race. The story was actually pretty cool. How he got involved with the organization. A very sad out, I guess, when everybody kind of got fired. I believe he was on the list when they had to
Yeah.
cut budget. But anyways, just a really pleasant conversation with Steve.
And just a man. Took in
Interesting
his
man.
sister-in-law's kids after their dad was killed in a tragic accident and she was struggling
Mhm.
to cope. Just took in kids like that, young kids. I think one was under a year.
And he wasn't that old himself.
No, and I think his wife was pregnant with their first.
Yeah,
They
something like that.
just takes care of business. Anyway, if you get yourself used to that, you can race down in calories.
I think gut training is like kind of all the rage, and it's kind of been spearheaded by the Roches recently,
Yep.
because they got media out there, and he's pounding food and then running threshold, and everybody. I'm getting more questions about it now too,
Yep.
like the gut training and the fueling for long stuff. So I think that's very timely, because we're starting to get that thrown at us again. Like ultras aren't a foot race; they're a test of your stomach endurance, right? Or like it's really an eating competition,
Yeah.
and people are really embracing that side of the ultra right now. So that would be a good one to listen to.
Yeah. And we probably need to do an episode on that because there's so much to say on how much
Mhm.
people are leaving on the table with just guessing. But this brings us,
Hey, question
yeah,
actually. Um,
ruined my segue. 500 episodes in. We're still stepping on each
I've
other's toes.
ruined your segues
I changed
hundreds of
who
the
the
time.
next person was going to be because of our segue here. Now it's all blown up.
Well, maybe it'll even cement your segue further. An athlete I'm working with, Robert, says he wonders if I'm dealing with injury because I'm not fueling well enough during my runs. He says to me, and he says, like the Roches, even a 45-minute recovery run, you should be taking a gel, or you
No.
should eat a little bit beforehand. And he thought that'd be a worthwhile discussion for us to have. And I do very good at eating before and after running now. But the concept of like, hey, it's just in quotes a 6 mile recovery run. Does that require fueling
Right.
just to maintain availability? Obviously, your knee jerk reaction was no, but it's just
No
an
to the
interesting thing.
recovery run.
Yeah, well, and that's the question he was asking me, because
Yeah.
I think he's getting it. Some people are getting that idea now that, hey, like stay available. So like everything requires fueling, even something that's short and easy, fuel, just so that it sets you up better for your next time. And I go back and forth on that. Of course, actually, I don't go back and forth. I think it's a little silly to intra session fuel if it's not a big session, long session, or a demanding session. I think before and after is fine. But anyways, thought I'd ask.
Mhm.
That's all.
I do think that they are going it's a pendulum and it's currently going to swing way too far. People are going to go too far with it, but that's good because it's going to take people past our current perceived limits. And I
None of
know
us
for
settle.
sure I need to fuel more during quality sessions and long runs.
Sure, I agree with
Absolutely.
that part.
All right.
Uh-huh.
So what this reminded me though of
Did
is
I?
Fred Clary.
Okay, I didn't mess up your segue?
Nah, I don't care either way.
Okay. Fred Clary.
Fred Clary had a lot of really good takeaways, and he is he's in my top 10 of where you want to start as a runner. Go listen to Fred, a
Who's
guy
never run
who's
a step in his life.
never run a step in his life and doesn't coach people to run steps. And that's exactly why you should listen to him because he's totally unencumbered by all of our blinders that we have on. And he's also a master in his domain. But what do you think I take away from his episode? The one thing,
The 110% rule?
110. I don't know if it's that or 120% rule. It doesn't really matter.
We got we don't get a ton of negative comments, but we did get one negative comment on that recently. Do you know what I'm
Really?
talking about?
No.
Yeah, we did a post on the 110% rule, and the comment was, "No ways. Why would that logic make sense? You should do slightly easier. Do what you can manage, and then with small increments, increase till you achieve the required weight. Especially with running. What is being an advocate here is a sure way to get injured."
Yeah, that's a good way to take one small thing and take it as as if that represents every other
Everything
piece
you
ever
do, right?
associated with that statement. Yeah. Good job. You won the internet today, guy.
Anyways, go ahead.
Great. That's an internet argument. Good job. You you beat us. But the 100, and I always called it the 120% rule. Maybe it is 110. It doesn't really matter. The concept is if you are prepared to handle greater than the task at hand can be redlined and can be absorbed better. And that how that's implemented varies drastically. Like if you're going out to run Moab, you don't need to be ready to run 300 miles. You don't need to put in a 300-mile day or week so that you can handle 240,
Mhm.
but you need to be able to handle greater than the strain of the race. You need to be prepared for your tendons to be able to handle greater than the strain they'll receive from the terrain there. You need to be able to handle the downhills at a faster than race pace. So, it can be applied not just as do heavier, do more, do faster, as internet guy misinterpreted, but the concept applies to almost everything. And Steve got me thinking of it because if he can handle eating a sandwich on his way out the door and buying another one in the middle of the run, he can take down some gels in the middle of a race. Like if his gut's
Right.
prepared for that, that is more than 100% of what he's going to have to do during race day. And so he's now easing down the demands of his system when he goes to fuel during an ultra.
Yeah, we brought up this overswinging or 110% rule a couple times recently. So maybe people are sick of hearing about it. But the concept isn't, hey, I'm trying to run a 3-hour marathon. So I'm going to go run that pace for 30 miles. Heck yeah, that would be, first of all, ridiculous, too impossible, right? What we're outlining is an example would be I have a 10K race that I want to nail. Well, if your long runs are 18 miles, 6-mile race is going to suddenly feel very
Mm-hmm.
manageable and approachable. I want to run a 20-minute 5K, which is what, 620 something pace. If I want to do that, maybe I spend a good bit of time running intervals faster than that. That would be 110% of my goal race pace.
Mm-hmm.
And thus, race pace feels easier. The idea isn't like I'm going to run Moab 240, so I need to build up to a 300-mile long run. That's not what's being outlined.
Right.
It's increasing duration for shorter duration races in your training or training at faster than race pace with purpose so that the race feels manageable.
Right.
That's basically what we're outlining. And we do it. It's just maybe putting a simple phrase to it, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. You need to be able to handle a pace that's faster than what you have to handle on race day. You need to be able to handle and complete a distance that's longer than what you're going to complete while going faster on race day. That's what that means.
Hey, for sake of conversation, at what distance, just speaking duration, do you think the 110% rule becomes an error? It breaks itself, meaning like if you're going to race a marathon, is a 30-mile long run beneficial? Like at what point, and it will vary athlete to athlete, but like just duration wise, do you have an opinion on that? Like at what point do I not need to go further than race distance?
I think the last distance it's mandatory at is call it half marathon or 20K.
I agree.
That's the last
Yeah.
one it's mandatory. Above that, certain people will absolutely still benefit from a 30-mile long run for a marathon.
You see a
Generally,
lot of the
those are
pros do it.
fast people.
Their 30-mile long run takes them 3 hours,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or three and a half. Yeah.
They're done before most of us would finish a marathon.
Mhm.
But the classic example I always think of, Fred, when he does this is I flash back to high school and our interval sessions were 3 by mile and 6 by 800 were the most common.
For
We
cross
ran,
country.
yeah,
Mhm.
running goal race pace. Good workout, but you're taking what you're going to do in the race, running that pace, that stride, splitting it up and giving rest. And now on race day, you better hold it the whole time. We weren't
Mhm.
doing tempo runs. We weren't building the strength to hold on. And we weren't doing much faster than that. So it was just like we were kind of underprepared for the race distance. If you're
It's
going
a
to run
very
race
common high
pace,
school approach, though. Just get you used to what
yeah,
you're about to do, or try. Yeah, try it
yeah,
too.
safe move is to build up 30 minutes of slower than race pace intervals, and then 10 minutes of much faster than race pace intervals. But if you're going to only run race pace, you better accumulate more than 5K of work at some point in training.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean try to run 6K as hard as you can. It means maybe get 6K of work in.
My coaches were actually pretty good about that. At least early in the year, we did more.
Yeah.
But I think very traditionally, you run your race distance with you run the 2 mile, great. 8 by quarter mile it is today.
Yep. At race pace,
Okay.
I know you're ready.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that jumps out to you?
That one
There.
we could do a whole episode on, so I'm not going any deeper other than please, this is one of those go re-listen to.
Yeah, Fred Clary. We did 2 episodes with him. I did one alone when you were out of town
Yes.
with him as well. Just pure strength training for runners. Or in his opinion, it was a very good episode as well. He's just engaging. You just when he speaks, you believe it, even if it's on the fringe of what you
Yeah.
believe to be true or not. He's one of those guys that you just want to listen to, and he says it with such confidence that he's engaging, and he's often, correct. He'll make you think about things a little bit differently, little chauvinistic, but like in an
Yeah.
enjoyable way. Anyways, he's a good listen, Fred Clary.
And I believe the powerlifting in the real, like traditional strength training world, that's a very common personality. Sometimes they're infuriating and sometimes they're pleasant, like Fred, but they just believe things hard.
Yeah, yeah.
And it challenges you to either change your beliefs or prove them wrong. And I believe that's really good for people. You need
Mm,
to listen to someone who is, from time to time, not always, but it's good to listen to someone who is absolute in their beliefs because then you want to find out why.
mm.
Even if Fred says stuff I don't agree with, I'm at least going to have to read up on it to be sure because he's so sure that I have to come correct if I'm going to be sure.
His conviction is 100%.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
absolute. So I
Uh-huh.
like that.
That reminds me of the Ryan Whited interview we did, which was in the later, so I know that's not on your list. It's if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. If you can't crawl, roll. If you can't roll, flop around. Meaning, like, there's always a way to get some sort of progress.
Yeah.
And we asked him, and we said, like, is rest the answer to all injuries? And he's like, no. I'm like, how are you so sure? Whatever. And he's like, I know I'm right.
Yeah.
There's no debating. Rest is not the answer unless it is a bone trauma injury. And I'm telling you this with conviction. You can fight me on it. He said that to us with such certainty that I believe it and I preach it now.
Mhm.
Great. You're injured. Good. We're going to still move. All because of that one statement. That was another
Yeah.
one that reminded me. He was very convicted.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. All right.
All right. Let's take another left here. Johnny Luna Lima, episode 49. Another very good conversation. But in some of these, it's my clouded judgment with my perspective, my lens that is my takeaway. But with his it just got me really thinking about that idea of what if you find just that one thing that you can do either better than everyone else or that you can do better than anything else you can do and just went more in on that thing. Would you just be more dangerous as an athlete because of it?
He's the only person in the world who will ever say, no matter the downhill, I can get my heart rate to 180 and peg it.
Just set it where I want it.
I can work so hard and I'm so good at the skill of downhill running that I can work at was it 180, 170? I
I
forget
don't
what it
remember
was.
what it was,
Said
but
I
he could
can
pick.
pin it. I was like, I can't. Like the terrain dictates how hard I can work. He's like, not me. And I saw him do it at the Spartan Race World Championships.
Yeah.
It was like he was a boulder that just got shoved down that mountain. That's the speed he was going. Didn't matter what was in his way, but
And
okay.
he's done it and not spoiler alert, but his thing was downhill running. And we've seen him do it on dirt roads, like fire roads. We've seen him do it on like black diamond ski hills in summer with just overgrown grass and things there. We've
Seen him do it
seen,
on switchbacks in bouldery terrain in Tahoe.
yeah, he did it in what were the islands that the island they did the Golden
Uh-huh.
Trail that,
He had the fastest downhill on one of those.
yeah, and he was top 3 on everything. And they had all different types of terrain there. A lot of it was mucky or boggy or overgrown. Anyway, he can do it everywhere, and he can choose his heart rate zone doing it. Now, most of us don't have a thing we can do so well that we're going to be one of the best in the world, but we have a thing we can do so much better than our other things that we can get more useful work done there. Matt Novakovich is the other example of this. He found out he can just hike or jog uphill at steep terrain for a long time, and he enjoys it, and his fitness responds to it. And as a result, he could do a higher level of volume in gray zone to upwards of threshold than anyone else in the sport at that time, because he could do it for hours every day
Mm-hmm.
and there was no impact. So he could drive more engine work because he was doing his thing. And of course, he became a fantastic uphill racer, but he broke 16 again at like 40. His running got so good because he did so much threshold work and so much gray zone work that his running still benefited because engine's
Mm-hmm.
engine. So what if you just found your thing and used it to make everything else better?
Yeah. Um, I mean, that's a great point. I think most people don't know what their thing is, right?
Yeah.
Because they feel like they're not as, they need to improve everywhere. That's how I feel, anyways. But, um, if your thing is being able to always kick home at the end of a race, I mean, what do you do with that? I don't know.
Yeah. And
There's other answers to that question, but
I think most people have to boil it down to a more approachable place first, which is like, look at, when I do all my different runs, which one am I most excited doing? Or which one am I least beat up after? And some people are like, it's trails, or I can run on pavement, or mine is, if there's hills involved, I can go 30 minutes longer. And it's like, well, what if you just made that like more of your thing
mhm.
just to work on fitness until you find out what other skill you have? But boiling it down real simplistic to finding out, how should I actually use the skills I've been given to train better?
The other thing that stands out to me about the Johnny Luna Lima episode is, one, the guy's very humble. Two, the key to Johnny Luna Lima's breakthrough wasn't anything fancy. It was the fact that he chose to be smart and build himself from the ground up. He had constantly had stress fractures and was injured. And once he got healthy and could train consistently for a few years in a row, he started to break through. The other thing that I took away from his interview, which is very humanizing, is the rise and fall of an athlete and then the potential rise again, which he's on now, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I loved it to death and I did too much. And suddenly I was unavailable again and my performance suffered, And so his story is very humanizing, is in which, like, even the best of the best, and Johnny is one of the best of the best, it's not as clear as we all think it is. You work hard, you perform better, and you improve until you're the best in the world at everything. It doesn't work that way. There's seasons of life and seasons of change, and our performances ebb and flow, even when you think you're doing everything right. And he was a case of, like, he broke onto the scene, then he fell from the competitive graces because he was in overtraining syndrome, and then now I think he finally recentered and found his center point, just like you talked about with the fueling, where everybody's going to go so far one way with it, and we're going to end up back to center, which is sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Finding that is where we sort of talked to Johnny when we talked to him that first time, was like, I'm fine. I'm refining my center. We all find our limits and how to improve, and then what is too much and what is not enough. It was just very interesting, I think, case of human nature,
Yeah.
his conversation.
We're so spoiled by many of the greats in sports just being there for decades uninterrupted. You have Manning, Brady, LeBron James, Jakob. Like, they get to the top and then they're just there every single year, and they're rarely injured. And like Brady or someone, if they're injured, they come back and they're better than they ever were. And we start to think like that's what greatness is. Like, well, that's not superhuman. I mean, it's superhuman, but that's not like very human. That's not a human characteristic. Johnny's is a representation of what like a human goes through, even if you're great. It doesn't mean you're done. It doesn't go away, but sometimes it's taken away for a while. But it can still be waiting if you see the process through long enough.
Well, the problem, I'm going to call it the problem with running, endurance training, is yes, there's a big skill component, but it's not, I don't think it's the majority of it. It's an engine component. And if you play basketball, you can spend 3 hours on the free throw line and you can do your drills and you can work your lateral movements and then you have your gym work and just some running plays with your teammates. And it can be hours and hours of diversified time spent. And with running, it seems to be like, well, running more is the best way to level up. But there is a limit that we have to hold, that eventually, like where other sports have a lot more, yeah, I guess is diversified skills
Yeah.
necessary. So you can always work on things. And with running, it's like, it's not that way. And so we can run ourselves into problems because we think more is better and it's not. It's not. In fact, everybody more at some point, more is not better. More is detrimental. That's
Yeah.
an interesting concept because the greats, the Bradys, the LeBrons are the first ones at practice and they're the last one to leave. They show up on Saturdays when it's not game day and put in 3 hours of skill work. And they do all these little things that are glorified and admirable. But as a runner, I'm not going to go do a second 3 hour long run after my morning 3 hour long run because that's going to put me into the ground.
Right.
So it's tricky. You get what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
tricky.
The number one factor is cardiovascular as a runner. Number one. And all the skill components and all the other components combined together don't add up to enough to ever beat the cardiovascular advantage. Where
Okay.
in other sports and ball sports, they can. If you took a quarterback who was moderately talented for a really good quarterback, like run of the mill pro quarterback, and they learn the playbook and to read defenses better than anyone who's ever done it, you get a potential Hall of Fame quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens all the time. There are quarterbacks out there with not the best arm, no mobility, and they just pick people apart. And that doesn't happen in running. There's no
Mm-hmm.
skill you can summon up that'll ever beat engine. And as a result, all that extra time that people can put into skill work really just needs to go towards engine work. And that's destructive in nature. So it's very difficult to find that one thing and use it in a way that impacts you without really dialing in how you use it.
You can want it so bad and work it so hard that you
Yeah.
beat it to death.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So it's just an interesting balance. That just reminded me of that.
Yeah. All right. I guess kind of piggybacking that. Episode number 59, we talked to Yancy Culp.
Oh, Yancy.
That's one to listen to if you ever just need to be reminded that this all is a gift. That was my takeaway. Being able to pursue running is a gift. Yancy had a lot he talked about that we could label here, but more than anything, just a man who is endlessly, optimistically energetic about being able to live life and attack it.
Yeah, Yancy Culp been involved with Spartan for a long time and now pretty much spearheading all the DECA events. He would be like sort of the kingpin organizer and put it pretty much kind of his event, really.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he created or had most of the creation process, but he had, I believe it was colon cancer in his 30s and had to go through, I mean, it wasn't an easy process. It did not, he was very sick, had to go through the chemo, I believe radiation, maybe some removal surgeries, and came out the other side and still competed hard. And it's like, you can listen to that episode and it's going to feel like you had 2 cups of coffee because the guy just instills life in other people, right?
Yeah.
You can't not be jacked up when you talk to and listen to Yancy Culp. And so that is his story. And then he looks at things from that lens. What a gift to chase being a cyborg, his words, not mine, in this endurance space. And, he had the unfortunate luck, we'll call it, of dealing with that circumstance, but then very much positive spin and rose tinted glasses
Yeah.
since.
And what I love most about Yancy is that he's not trying to be a motivational speaker. He doesn't get in your face. He doesn't yell at you. He doesn't try to shame you or motivate you or light a fire. He's just so unequivocally optimistic and energetic that you can't help but be motivated by him. The speakers who are out there trying to motivate in YouTube clips, you can tell they're just cultivating their performance. Like they have put on this act and they might believe in
Yeah.
it, but they have written their script. They have stood in front of the mirror and they have practiced what they think the performance needs to be in order to elicit a response from you. It doesn't make it any worse or less powerful, but there is something special about watching someone who just can't help it. He just can't help this
Mhm.
radiation to just pour out of him, and it's going to get on you. And it's felt pure with Yancy. And that's the kind of thing that stuck with me.
This wasn't from a Yancy episode. Um, it was from a Ryan Kent episode. I don't know if you recall. But this is when Ryan Kent was working with Yancy in some capacity still. And it was in Ryan's sort of peak Spartan heyday where he was
Yep.
winning some U.S. National Series. And I don't know if you remember this, but Ryan played a voice message from Yancy Culp that he sent to Ryan the morning of his race. And it was like 3 minutes of enthusiasm and just hype boy city. And that was coming from his then coach. And that always stuck out to me as super endearing.
Yeah, Yancy woke up that morning and could not be any more excited about what Ryan was set up to go out and do.
Mm-hmm.
And he just needed Ryan to know.
Right. And Ryan
Again,
played
just
that
pure.
voice message for us. Yeah, just pure. Yeah.
Listen
But
to
I
Yancy Culp.
would say the other thing from Yancy is just his investment in the community from a genuine place too. Like he's fought some hard battles with Spartan and he's fought and clawed to get things to stick and to work and to build honestly a dying brand. And he's done a great job in the hybrid space of creating something for people to chase and getting buy-in. And that's Yancy Culp. He has been the first domino in that side of the sport for Spartan.
Yeah.
So he deserves a lot of credit for that.
He really does.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to pivot a little bit away from spiritual existence into just some cold, hard facts and truths about the nuts and bolts of training for running. First is Ryan Woods. Episode number 10. Variety does not equal improvement. Simple and consistent over time. That is the formula for greatness. I have never met a faster man personally in my life with more vanilla, boring training than Ryan Woods. Ryan, would you remember his stats? Can you rattle off his times, or should I do that?
I have 1340s in the 5K, right?
Yeah, I think 1350 flat.
1350 flat in the 5K. He was on the U.S. Mountain national team, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Multi-time All-American in college, I believe,
Yep.
potentially.
And conference champ at North Carolina State.
Big-time D1 runner.
343, 1500. Trained with the Nike farm team out in Oregon post-collegiately. Like you're sub 14, even in this day and age. If you run 1350 in a 5K, you're legitimately fast.
Yeah. And he did that in the 90s, maybe 2000, long time ago. You all right over there?
I'm struggling now.
Ugh, you're at least you know to mute yourself.
Oh, all right. You asked if I was going to cry.
Yeah, your eyes are looking a little bloodshot. That was a coughing fit for the ages. Go ahead.
It's like someone rammed a toothpick right through my esophagus in the middle of that one.
I don't know what that feels like. I will say, when I first got into sport, when I first got into OCR and looking at who was the best, and I was newer to Strava, and this is forever ago, I had a folder on my phone, Ryan Woods workouts, and I screenshot his Strava. I screenshot his Strava workouts. He put everything on there. And first of all, to his credit, always floats. Ryan Woods was floating his way into fitness, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with half float recovery. He always is the first place I regularly saw floats. Ryan Woods. Okay, there might be something to it. I did 3 by 10 minutes. I did 30, 60, 90 with equal float recoveries. It was all these minute-based sessions that weren't terribly fancy, maybe done on roads, maybe done on terrain. But I think, like, unless it was very short recoveries, he was floating everything. He was feathering on and off the gas. Ryan Woods was threshold training to the max with just disguising it in these ladder or minute based sessions. And he did it twice a week, every week, capped it with a long run, ran 60 miles a week, right? Ish.
With a lot
And
of
just
vert.
did it for a lot of vert and did it for decades. But I remember never being like, I never saw him do like 3 by 3 miles or here's my 8 mile tempo. Or
Yeah.
he was always just in and out of minute based intervals with float recoveries.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
The workout that I feel like I've seen most from Ryan Woods throughout his the time that I've known him, so call it 14 on.
Mhm.
It's like 8 by 2 on, 2 off. That's like the quintessential Ryan Woods, and I might be a little off on the rounds or whatever, but I just feel like I've always seen that. Ryan ran 8 by 2 today. 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off. What that meant to him, who knows? We know he was working hard, and then he was not working hard, but it wasn't resting. And it was oftentimes done on trails, and it was in like a 10 to 12 mile run. And you couldn't look at it and even find out how hard he was working. You just knew that he
And he
kept doing that
didn't wear a
workout.
heart rate monitor, so you never knew.
And once he did, it was wrist based, and he'd always be like, this thing's way off. I have no idea what's happening here.
Mhm.
But he just did those workouts and he kept coming back to them. And as someone who's been on a Team USA and a Nike farm team and ran post collegiately and been a Division I conference champ, for them to come back to the simple, easy to digest, repeatable workouts, I don't know, I shouldn't say never. I almost never remember seeing a distance listed in an interval. Like you said, it was always time based. And he just crushed life with those kind of workouts. But he repeated them for years. Nothing flashy, and thus nothing to burn out on.
Not comparing myself to Ryan Woods at all, but I feel like there hasn't been a lot of flash in my life. It's just been consistent, and I think it works.
Yeah.
It reminds me, I saw something on one of the YouTube videos I was watching while I was on the treadmill a few weeks ago, and it was some of the pros running. They were in a marathon build, and they said, yeah, in high school, the high school kids, they train like college athletes now. And the college athletes, they train like pros. And us pro athletes, he's like, we train like high school kids. like saying how foundational and simple their stuff actually gets again. Like
Yeah.
you get cute and fancy and layer. He's like, you revert back to training like a high school kid in a sense. Like we keep it simple. We dumb it down. I just find that very entertaining that some of the best in the world, even this day, 2025, are keeping it simple.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the guys' workouts was like the only difference I noticed, like this one session was he did a 10-mile run, which is a lot of volume at like recovery effort, then a 4-mile tempo, then it was 4 by 800. Like, what is that? But it's
4
on
mile tempo
paper.
with 4 by 800 was like our classic fall workout as middle distance track runners.
He put 10 miles before it, and
That's the difference.
it's just interesting. It's just not like there's nothing fancy about
Nope.
that, but it's just pure. It's work. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Next up, episode 18. Any guess who episode 18 was?
Ryan Kempson.
That is very close. He's the next one on the list. Nicole Mericle.
I know where you're going with this one already.
Take it.
Nicole Mericle was known, and maybe is known, but at the time we interviewed her, as the fastest pure foot speed female runner in the game. And come to find out, Nicole Mericle did no flat fast running in order to do that. That's the big takeaway from every quality session Nicole Mericle did was uphill.
Uphill.
Uh-huh. That stands out to me, like 3-minute intervals. She's just doing 3-minute hill reps, or she was doing, but nothing was flat because she was coming back. Was it a knee issue?
Hips.
A
She had
hip
had labor
issue?
surgeries in her hips.
And Nicole's crushing the sport. Everything she touched turned into gold. She had her big breakthrough, was even beating Lindsay. I mean, beat Lindsay Webster by minutes in some of these early season Spartan races, assuming flat and fast was her thing. She doubled down on, like Johnny Lima with his downhills, and come to find out, not one step flat and
Not
fast in
one.
her lead-ins. Not literally not one.
Yeah. And that's really when we started putting words to our thoughts on that concept of engine is engine. Now, she was a college track runner. She has good running mechanics. She knows how to do the skill of running fast. That is a prerequisite for a lot of these takeaways. but uphill speed work is just speed work. It's not speed work in disguise. Might be strength work in disguise if you believe, was that Frank Shorter?
Yeah.
But it's just speed work. Uphill threshold work is just threshold work. There's no qualifier there. Now, she lives in Colorado, and Colorado gives you a lot of very gradual, long grades you can work at if you want. And so she had the ability to be like 5% uphill or 8% or 10 or
She was doing a lot of
30.
juice grade stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think at quality, yeah.
But that's still not what you would choose if you wanted to get faster. And yet she did, and she did. So it was a great reminder that uphill speed is not, there's no asterisk. It's just speed.
You know what it also reminds me of? I mean, we can't have this episode without saying Hobie Call's name unless he's on the list somewhere.
He's on the list.
He is. Okay, then I'll save.
Should we go to him next?
Well, is there
Steve.
anything more about Nicole here? That
Uh,
concept?
it's that simple that we can. I used to overprogram. Sorry, I didn't get muted for that one. I used to overprogram so much in terms of all the different things I needed to get in. I needed flat ground speed, and I needed uphill speed, and I needed downhill speed, and then I needed flat ground threshold and uphill threshold and downhill threshold, and I needed long runs flat and long runs uphill. And it was just I was trying to mix so many things into the pot, and we can just relax and be like, it translates. If the
Mhm.
skills are in place, the engine translates.
Okay, well, and Nicole Mericle was relatively low mileage, which is a
Yeah.
very good segue to Hobie Call, which is the point I want to make. So bring us there if you'd like.
Hobie Call. What do you have? Because I have three things written down about Hobie. This is all combining into the same concept, but
Hobie Call was our first guest. Our first episode ever of the podcast was episode 1. Don't call it a comeback with Hobie Call. This is just pre-COVID. We didn't know COVID was going to drop the ball out from underneath us. Hobie was 42
we didn't know how to
ish.
talk on a microphone.
Well, you did.
I didn't know how to interview someone to save my life.
No, well, I mean, it was clunky, but we got better. But nonetheless, we got one of the goat at the time of the sport on as our first guest, and we were very excited about it. And Hobie Call is multi-time Spartan race world champion, probably one of, if not the most accoladed running credentials of anybody who pursued OCR space at the time. He was a 2:16 marathoner, I believe, was his.
Yeah.
He chased
1402 5K.
14:02. He chased the marathon for a good. He's a dad of like 12 kids. He's in HVAC. He works a regular job in the mountains of Utah, and one of the most likable people you'll ever meet and humble human beings ever. That's Hobie Call. I'm just trying to give people some context on who these people are if they haven't listened.
Right.
And he's a fantastic episode. Even if it was our first and we do it much differently, if we got him now, it was still a good listen. But point being, there's a couple of takeaways with him. But talking about Nicole Mericle and then doubling down on what you're good at, Hobie Call was running a self-proclaimed 20 miles a week, 18 to 20 miles a week when he was dominating the sport. And a big takeaway for me, and then Nicole Mericle, was like money deposits in your running and fitness piggy bank. Just because you're not putting as many deposits or as much deposits in now doesn't mean that that money isn't still there to withdraw from. And Hobie spent years, decade, 2 decades running 100-mile weeks. And he found a new formula that worked and was sustainable for him that was running much less. He was doing a lot of biking and his strength work and a lot of quality, but not a lot of quantity running. And a big takeaway for me for that is, especially as an aging athlete, which he was and is, he was in his 40s when we interviewed him, is body of work is body of work. And just like bodybuilders in the gym, you can work your butt off for a decade, get this huge physique, and then you can maintain it with much less work. And he was a shining example of the fact, like, hey, I put in 20 years, 100-mile weeks. Now I'm going to maintain that and work my pointy end of the spear. And that
Mhm.
big takeaway for me for him was those bank deposits don't just bleed out the bottom. They're still in there. And
Yeah.
so he could perform at such a high level off of lower mileage because he earned the right to. And most of you listening, and if you're a newer runner, haven't earned that right, and you wouldn't have his success. But for me, it was just power to like keep showing up, and you're going to reap those rewards for a lifetime. I think
Yep.
that was a big thing.
Absolutely. I have written down, I actually said 19, not 18.
Okay.
Or
I said 18 to 20.
yeah, 19 to 20, but then he expanded up to 30 later in his career. Actually, he started adding another session.
Okay.
But 19 to 30 miles per week, multiple world champs, 3 runs per week on average, and then 3 strength sessions.
A
And
lot of
what,
those runs around the treadmill.
yeah, and what Hobie did is he did not run a step that wasn't a stride he would use in a race. He just removed the easy running from his plan and he replaced it with an engine that had already been built with cycling and with strength endurance. He was probably the pioneer in my eyes of strength endurance as running fitness. His strength sessions were nonstop circuits.
Dude, the amount that guy lunged.
His lunges, his squats, his all of his wild routines that he would do. He was famous for saying, "Yes, I only run 3 times per week and 19 miles, but you couldn't finish most people couldn't finish my warm up." Because his
Mhm.
warm up was up to 40 minutes long and it was really just a leg builder. Like the things I'm
Mhm.
prescribing as leg builder workouts for ultras and hybrid sports right now are basically seeded by Hobie Call's warm up that he would do back in the day. So he just did so much work that wasn't running, but that was designed to target everything that would be used while running. He added that to, like you said, 2 decades of 70 to 110 miles per week, and all 3 of his sessions were all quality. Every stride he took was very, very, very purposeful, and it just worked. He knew exactly how to get to where he wanted to. He believed in it so wholeheartedly, and he had the previous training to back it up.
I mean, think about like one of his workout I still prescribe. Not as often anymore, but I do, and I still use his name. And and I learned it from you, the Hobie Tempo.
Yep.
I mean, what is it? So let's say the classic Hobie Tempo. It could be variations, but like lunges, burpee, broad jumps, and then tempo in quotes running, rinse and repeat with no
Yep.
rest. And so even if you do that for an hour, okay, you got an hour of running in, and you get let's say 2 minutes of duress in between with your lunges and burpee broad jumps, or you do that for an hour in total, let's say, maybe Hobie gets 10 miles in that time period. But it was preceded by some sort of warm up, like you talked about. It's an hour of running, but it's such a compromised state that when race day comes, it feels like a gift because he's not hammering his legs with all this extra work in between. And he always shows up ready to fire. But there's so much work hidden in what he does. He was tying bands to himself behind the treadmill and running into the band, right?
Right.
On the treadmill. I mean, the band wanted to pull him off the back of the treadmill. He was fighting two birds at the same time, speed and that band. And he did all these the biggest innovator in the sport for
Yep.
sure. Um, time equivalent, maybe Hobie was putting in 9 hours a week of training,
Yeah.
but on paper, he ran 20 miles a week. It's
Yep.
very fascinating.
Yeah. And he would just do it every week and micro change what he was doing. But yeah, his original one, I was watching he sent me his DVD. I asked him about it at a race one time. He mailed it to me.
His DVD.
Yeah. His Hobie Calls How to Train for Obstacle Course Racing DVD.
He has a DVD. I didn't know he had this
Yep.
DVD.
Yeah. And he was 5-minute intervals running down the road on not the median, but the strip between the sidewalk and the road. So he's running on grassy terrain in his race shoes, which were the Brooks Mach like 5s at the time. He's in cross country rubber bottom racing flats, running on the median at 5-minute pace, essentially for 5-minute reps, dropping down and doing walking lunges and fast burpee broad jumps, and then just repeating that for 5 rounds, 25 minutes of 5 flat pace with compromised stations in between. And that was his workout for the day, but it was preceded by a 40-minute leg builder warm up. Like that's a big session.
I could be wrong in saying this, but I don't think anybody taught him this. I think this was him in the
Self-taught.
lab with his lab coat on, right? Just figuring it out. He was really the true innovator of OCR style
Yep.
training.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, the other thing is that stands out about his episode is nobody gets that good by not using every ounce or minute or second of the day and have it be purposeful. Hobie call, worked a laborious job, and he took a nap over lunch every day instead of whatever, went to lunch with his buddies or did this because that's what he needed to do in order to get his training in. He didn't sacrifice everything and decision he made with his physical being was revolved around getting the most out of his time and body and life circumstance that he could. And so when you realize how dialed he actually was with his eating, with his sleeping,
Hmm.
with the little things, I was like, huh, you're pretty committed. He's like, yeah, I go in my car and sleep, or I sleep in the
Yep.
rafters, or I do like every day. Like it's
Every day.
important.
He'd
Yeah.
carry his breakfast in his thermos. It was a smoothie based thing. He'd drink that throughout the day so he wouldn't take his first break. And then he'd eat his lunch in his car in between trips so that wherever he was at lunchtime, he would just drop and nap every single day.
Doesn't sound very sexy if you really, I mean, he did a document, like a little 15-minute documentary thing with Spartan. And he's like, people want to be me, but if you knew what my day was like you won't want to be me.
He said,
And
most
that's
days
how
I
it,
don't want to be me.
that's right. Most days I don't want to be me. Just interesting. It's very not sexy. There's so much not sexiness to what we do to make us great. And his whole life was like not sexy in the sense that he had to check a lot of boxes and not most of it wasn't sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you called him earlier, Ryan Kempson, episode number 7. Lot to take away, a lot to take away from him. But mine was rehab and prehab like it's your job. And weaknesses can and will turn into strengths. You see that online a lot. Turn your weakness into strength. Yeah, that's a great sentiment, but it is a job to do that. And he did it.
Yeah. So Ryan Kempson, again, somebody who worked his way through the running and OCR ranks, started off as an average to above average competitor. In fact, his younger brother or older, is Matt older?
Matt's,
His brother
I don't know.
Matt, I don't know either. His brother Matt had won the battle in the win and losses column, I think, over the years. And eventually, even through injury, and the big one with Ryan Kempson was a hip labrum tear where he had to have surgery and he struggled through that and had to rebuild himself from the ground up. And it took him years. The thing about Ryan Kempson is he committed to the front of the race no matter his fitness. And he went down in flames so many times until one day he didn't. And then until the next day, he was running away from people. But it all came down to the little piddly stuff, the Bedenka method, which jumps out at me, which was all about joint mobility and his belief in fluid range of motion and joint mobility and
Mm-hmm.
spending hours a day on joint mobility in order to keep himself healthy. And eventually it allowed him to run more, get back from his hip labrum surgery, and then eventually have an unbelievable racing few seasons.
Yeah. And he had something that probably I can count on one, maybe two hands, the number of athletes I've seen that have this in my life, which is the ability to run a long, bouncy, powerful stride on broken terrain. Most people cannot do that, but he could do that. And he
On
could do that
soft, muddy terrain, he could do it.
soft, muddy, rocky, technical. He could open up his hips and land with stability and drive with power, no matter what was under his feet. And that came from his rehabbing like it was his job of his hips. He got to the point where his hip girdle and his ankles and everything were so strong and stable and reactive and balanced that he could use his stride everywhere. He didn't have to cultivate different strides or different techniques. It may have felt like it to him, but visually, he was just running fluid and powerful anything he ran on.
And somebody we just mentioned a little bit ago, Johnny Luna Lima, prescribed to the very similar methods and protocols. And
Mm-hmm.
who else could open their hips up and run downhill and had that very beautiful stride? Johnny
Yeah.
Luna Lima. And it was very similar methods. Probably something to that.
Sorry. Absolutely. But it was years. It cost months and years of doing the piddly stuff like it was the main course every day. And
Yeah,
then
his
he had it.
morning routine, I believe, out of bed every morning, or at least in the first couple hours of day was like, wasn't it like 30 to 60 minutes of
Like an hour
stuff, like
stuff every
non-running,
morning.
like kind of goofy looking mobility drills and stuff, range of
Stuff.
motion stuff,
Yep.
we'll call it. And I think what Taylor Cruz, what's the guy's name?
I think it's Taylor Cruz.
Taylor Cruz. I think
Cruz
he had
Elite.
Cruz Elite hired him, I believe, to help coach him through some of those things as well, if I'm not mistaken. It was a
Yeah.
takeaway. It's always made me Ryan explaining that and then me doing my own research caused me to double down on the philosophy that strength work is mobility work in disguise, in the sense where if we're putting our body under stress in a full range of motion movement, whether it's a squat or a bench press or a pull up or whatever, that we are actually, we're activating the insertion points of the joints, the tendons, ligaments, and using them under duress and compromised range of motion. That is mobility work. And he is on a very heightened and expanded version of that with what he was doing. But it cemented sort of a thought process for me, actually, about like, yeah, what I'm doing in the gym is actually mobility work.
Yep.
Yeah,
And it's useful because you are then active in every range of that motion and strong through that.
exactly. What did anything else jump out to you at that? He was always, Ryan Kempson didn't run a road in his life. I mean, he was on terrain every time he ran because he only raced on terrain. He was on terrain, technical terrain always. I don't remember seeing a road run come through from him in the years I followed him. Do you?
Yeah, he ran a 5K
Okay.
and he ran like 1550, I think. And he said he nearly lost his life doing it. And I looked at him and I was like, I have run next to you. You are a 1450 guy.
Yeah.
And it's just because you don't ever touch this terrain. You're
Yeah.
fast. 1550 is fast, but you give yourself 6 weeks of road work or track work, and you're going to cut like at least 30 seconds off this time right away.
One of the prettiest runners I've seen.
Great.
You
Just
see a
a
stride and you
great
envy
athlete.
it, when you see people running, like I don't look that buttery when I run.
Yeah.
One of those you look at and you're like, ugh, I wish I looked like that when I ran.
He's what happens when a great athlete becomes a great runner. He was an all-state football player and played basketball at a small
Basketball.
college and then
Yeah.
became a monster runner. And he just has a power to his running and a grace that doesn't look normal.
I agree.
All right, so I'm actually going to briefly skip past. I had Matt Novakovich on here, but this is already taking a long time and we talked about it, but his was Incline trainer. We don't have to go deep into that, but Hobie Call revolutionized the sport of OCR more than probably all the rest of us combined. But Matt Novakovich introduced the greater endurance world to the power of the incline treadmill.
Matt Novakovich sold a lot of Nordic tracks that he doesn't know about.
Yes, he did.
Basically, the concept. I guess we don't need to go in the background with Matt. We talked to Matt recently within the last few months on this podcast, anyways, I believe. I always enjoy talking to Matt. He can be kind of a polarizing figure on social media, right? Not everybody agrees with his outlook on some stuff. But by large, very enjoyable guy. And basically, the equivalent, you'd mentioned that he spent a lot of time going uphill at maybe even gray zone. But when exclusively what you're doing is going uphill on the treadmill, you take so little impact damage that you can almost skew the 80-20 principle to 60-40 like a biker would
He was
do.
a cyclist.
Like a cycle athlete would do, and where you can work higher heart rate zones more often because the structural damage isn't there if you're only going uphill. There's fatigue in there, don't get me wrong. So he was skewing the ratio. He kind of cheating the system. I'm still getting run mechanics at time by running uphill. I'm hiking uphill. We do that in races. I'm just staying available. And that's how Matt stayed healthy. He did that because that was his choice. I can either run on flat ground limited and get injured, or I can go uphill and double down on this. And it worked fantastically for him.
Yeah. And we've used it. We've all benefited from it every day since he made it known what he was doing. If there is a magic like bean in endurance training, I think it's uphill work.
It's cheat code. His plan, and then we'll move on. His typical weekly schedule at the time when we first chatted with him was he was pretty much on the incline trainer, and he'd spend 6 hours a day on there sometimes, right? He would literally. But he hit the track once a week for flat, fast speed work, right? He would go to the track on a Tuesday or whatever it was and hit something of purpose at speed. And I don't know, maybe he'd run real terrain on the weekend, but maybe not. And everything else was uphill.
His knees were always so bad that downhills were brutal for him. So he never did the type of trail and mountain work you'd expect from someone who lives in Anchorage.
Right. Right. But I think it was. I think an important piece of his puzzle was the fact that he once a week still understood the importance of mechanical efficiency and
Yep.
got to it. I believe he did pure actual track work and did traditional type speed sessions to maintain that type of fitness. But yes.
All right. Miguel Medina.
Miguel, was it that long ago? He was the first 100?
He's in the first 100. No, maybe some of these skipped ahead. There's not a number next to a few of these, but Miguel Medina. This is someone that I met in probably 2013 and 2013. And I just didn't think he should be pursuing running. He was part of that early era of Spartan where a bunch of not that he was a bro, but kind of a bunch of bros and gym guys and CrossFitters would just do OCR because it was gnarly. And he had enough success early on to make the pro team, but I could just see that the sport was going to become more and more runners and less of the non-runner would be able to be there. And he was so passionate that I just thought he was going to get hurt by this. Macaulay and I always would talk about if we cared about this half as much as Miguel did, we'd be so good. But I just didn't think he should be pursuing this because he just wasn't going to have the ability to run. He had a non-typical runner form, and he wasn't particularly gifted. And I just felt for him that he's going to have his heart broken by this sport because every year he's going to become less successful, but he wants it so badly. And what did Miguel do right before we interviewed him?
I believe he won WTM.
He didn't win
Or
that, but he won
something.
the Ure 100.
The Ure 100.
One of the most difficult mountain races in North America. And it's not like a cakewalk field that does it. There's always good people there. It's 100 miles and it has something crazy like, I want to say 42,000 feet of vert. And he won it. And so my takeaway there is just, it says, if you're willing to, ... If you're just willing to do what it takes, you can become a successful endurance athlete. I was wrong about him. I was absolutely wrong. He didn't have his heart broken. He just kept going until he was taking souls out on the race course.
He broke hearts.
He did.
Yeah, it's interesting. A guy that you and see, I don't have the history with him. In fact, I don't know if him and I have raced that we know about each other. So you have more history with Noel, but take a guy who you don't think can be a good runner, and now it's almost. I don't want to diminish the ultra and the talent and an ability to run that it requires, because it requires both.
Yeah.
But Noel isn't winning 5Ks.
Miguel.
We
have Noel Medina in the sport and Miguel, and we constantly just our brains switch those two.
But you can draw that out oftentimes. I'm not the fastest at 12 and a half laps around the track or even a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, being stubborn AF and willing to just outwork people rises to the surface. And I feel like he's a case of that.
He is. So this sums up Miguel to me. Macaulay is hesitating. And for people who haven't listened for a long time, Macaulay is my younger brother. He is a talented runner.
Great episode with your brother, by the way. We need to have him on again. I enjoyed him.
We should. But he's a talented runner.
Did you put him on your list?
No, we haven't got to that one yet.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. He's a very talented runner. I would say he's more talented than I am, but he just hasn't approached running the way I have. And I was trying to get him into OCR constantly. And oftentimes we'd have this thing we do where I'd front his trip because he was just coming out of college or still in college. I'd front his flight somewhere. And then if he won prize money, he could pay me back for travel.
Oh.
And there was a Spartan race in Aloha Stadium in Honolulu, Hawaii. The stadium where the Pro Bowl was held every year. And they were putting up, Navy Federal sponsored it. So they were putting up prize money. It was like $3,000, $2,000, $1,000 or something like that. I'm like, Macaulay, let's just go do this thing. So we take a trip out there with the family. Lisa Braden was like 1 at the time. And we go do this thing. And Miguel shows up. along with a couple other racers. And Macaulay and I run out to the lead, and Miguel comes with us and is just breathing like a freight engine. And we get away from him, and then Macaulay misses his spear and has to do his burpees. And I just ran with Miguel for a while, kind of slowing the pace down a little bit so that Macaulay can catch back up to us. And he does. And then misses the football throw. You had to throw it into a sideways bucket. And it was like a little Nerf ball. And Miguel made it. And I did the same thing again. And Macaulay caught back up to us. And while I'm running with Miguel, running next to him, he is just thrashing himself. He is gasping. And Macaulay's now caught us twice. And Miguel's just thrashing himself. I'm like, just give it up. Like, we're going to just run away. Just stop trying, and we won't have to do this, Miguel. And then he doesn't. So we have to surge at the end and pull away. And Macaulay and I take first and second. And I think Miguel took fourth. He got a penalty on maybe one of the worst obstacle ever done in Spartan race. I don't know if we need to get into it now, but it was foolish, and he didn't deserve his penalty. And
The
so he
wheelie
didn't.
thing?
What'd you say?
Is it the wheelie thing? The wheelie walk?
No. Okay. So we got to a row of like the outfield, or this isn't the outfield, but if it were a baseball field, like the seats down the sides where they fold up like movie theater chairs.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to go down. They were all closed, and you had to grab it and sit down in each one and then stand up and move to the next one.
That sounds horrible.
It was so dumb. It's like a box
How many
squat.
chairs?
Like 30, the entire row.
That's the dumbest thing
Like
I've
the
ever
race
heard.
just ground to a halt. It was, as we're doing it, we're talking to each other like, what is this? And then you got to the end, and then you had to like climb up each row to the top of the section.
You had to
It's like,
sit down 30 times. That was the obstacle.
sit down, stand up
The
30
task.
times.
Move
And
down one chair. What the
he got a 30 burpee penalty because they said one of his seats didn't fully lock out at the bottom.
dumbest thing ever.
Just the dumbest. And I think Chris Rutz got that as well or something. Anyways,
That's
he didn't.
sort of the reason we showed up to old Spartan races for, is like that sort of unknown though.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
that's a dumb one, but
potentially gave Macaulay an extra $1,000. But anyway, that was my memory of him as a runner. Just stupidly tough. Wouldn't give up. Like, it was obvious. Macaulay's done 60 burpees and he's running you down. I'm dawdling here. Like, just stop chasing this thing. And you know what he would have done to me and Macaulay 5 years later on that Ure 100 course? He would have decimated us. Because he didn't ever consider not pursuing this. And then he put in like 9 straight 100-mile weeks with above 10,000 feet of vert each week, just on the dot, 100, 100, 100 as his final lead in. And he was running like 80 to 100 for months prior. He outworked us, outlasted us, and then won a race I never in my life could win.
I always think you got to be like a psychopath. Psychopath, sort of, to be sitting in your own head for that long in the mountains training, like week in and week out. Like being in your own head while you're training for that many hours is a scary place to be, no matter how stable you are, right? Like eventually you're just alone with your thoughts all the time. It's just that's got to create some calluses, I would say, alone. Yeah.
So anyway, I think I said it on the episode, but like this is an apology to Noah. I mean, to Miguel. Why do I keep too many Medinas? This is an apology to Miguel, and it's like an ode to him. Like, this is what running can be if you just are willing to blank. Like, if you're willing to give yourself to it entirely, you can do a lot. And he has gotten to the point where he has won a race that Division I All-Americans have not won. He's just good. And I didn't think he should pursue this.
And I think Miguel listens to our podcast, so hopefully you catch this, Miguel. They did put out some like memes on Instagram, and one whole episode we called him Noel.
Oh,
remember that?
Yeah.
We messed that up pretty good. You mentioned that Macaulay is more talented than you. This isn't trying to like kick the beehive, but do you think you're the most untalented person in your family? Athletically, or no?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that I don't know. It's hard to tell because we are all like Macaulay and I are clones of each other.
Yeah.
but he is a little better cardiovascularly. My oldest sister is like 5'4" and was a rhythmic gymnast, but at the Olympic level. And my younger sister is 5'11" and is a basketball player. So like she's
Mm,
not an athletic based basketball player. So if you wanted to just test metrics, I don't know if she jumps off the page, but my
mm,
other sister is almost a foot shorter than her. Like it's really hard to compare the
okay.
different skill sets, but I think all of us would have the title of least athletic if you chose the right category.
You guys have taken sport very far, and you could take, everybody could have taken sport even
Yeah.
further, other than your sister is a professional athlete. It
But
feels
it's
like, but
funny because she was like the slowest. She wasn't a jumper. Marin, she was the laziest, and it wasn't even close. And yet she has made a living every single year since college playing basketball, either in the
that's wild.
WNBA or overseas. Like her skill set, she is the most skilled athlete. But is she? Because my older sister was an Olympic rhythmic gymnastics, which is all skill and hard work. So I don't know. We're all so different, but I'll happily claim the title of least athletic.
Just made me wonder. That's all. Because you got a high level crew over in the
Yeah.
Kraker lineage.
Yeah. All right. Next up here, Kirk. All right. This is a sad one that we have to even talk about, but it needs to be talked about. And so there isn't one episode. We have Morgan. We Morgan Schultz. We have Amelia Boone. We have Ryan Kent. We have Rhea Kobo. We have Bailey Kowalkiewicz. We have Callie Schweikert. And the list will continue going on, unfortunately. But the commonality through all of those athletes is inappropriate or disordered eating.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that, even as a brother to a sister in a sport, which was rhythmic gymnastics, which is like you almost, if you're not a card carrying disordered eater, you almost can't make it to the top. Kind of that sport is just riddled with unhealthiness in every plane of existence. Even watching that growing up, I had no clue how inappropriate far too many's relationship with running and eating is in our world. It's just, it's rife with it, and it needs to be talked about more and more and more and more until we can finally just dissuade people from taking that first step towards, if I'm lighter, I'm faster.
Yeah, we've had some fantastic, heartfelt, in-depth conversations with. There's probably a couple other athletes that we
Yep.
at least touched on it
This
with
was in
that
the
we
first 100.
right that we've interviewed, and I think we have some pioneers to thank, some professional type athletes who had come forward with situations like this and really opened the door, I think, to get the conversation going openly and publicly. And so we were able to have very good conversations with a number of people about their experience with how it starts from the broken organization or the coach or the subtleness or unintentionalist of a small comment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you were 5 pounds lighter, you'd be faster, but whatever. We're going to keep working, right? Something is non-invasive as that suddenly sends somebody into a spiral and they end up in the hospital.
Yeah.
And the coach meant literally like just a brush off comment that he or she didn't even mean to make. And you realize that the tiniest little pebble can cause the mountain to collapse. And half the time it was completely unintentional by either how it got started, whether it's from an outside factor or somebody's own internal rhetoric saying, like, if I'm lighter, I'm faster. I talk about it with myself all the times. How far would 5 pounds get me?
Mm-hmm.
But when that turns into a slippery slope, um, how much it impacts you on a cellular level, like every day, takes over your psyche, consumes your life, and eventually leads you down a path of underperforming,
Yeah.
eventually rock bottom, and eventually realizing that lighter at a certain point isn't faster. And most everybody we spoke with, actually, I think I can say everybody that you listed was having some of, if not the best performances of their lives, heavier.
Yeah.
Right? Can you think of anybody who that it's never completely solved? So that's not what we're trying to say. Like they haven't fixed their disorders, but they put weight back on. They ate more and more regularly, and they were having all of them. I think had PR'd or in their
Yeah.
post low eating disorder life, right? At
Yep.
healthy weights.
There's only one exception to that ever, And it's the person who hits a crazy PR and then never matches it again because they're injured and then gets healthy again, but never quite gets back down to that time, but then has longevity. That's
Right.
the only time, like, it was a flash in the pan and you can't recapture that, but now you can do everything else you've ever wanted to do. So
Mhm.
I used to be the type of person who, like, because people make this statement. You'll see coaches who don't care about the optics or want that bad boy optic out there say something like, I'm so sick of all the soft people who can't just acknowledge the fact that in a vacuum, lighter is faster. Like, we can have that conversation without getting an eating disorder. And I used to be like, you know what? They're right. But it's a slippery slope and it gets slipperier the longer you spend in that. But I'm not anymore. And do you know what changed that for me? It
What's that?
was two things. One, it was being in the sport longer and talking to people, and just realizing that you can't do anything physically without mental consequences.
Mm.
There's not a toughness that says I don't get an eating disorder, just like there's not a toughness level that says I don't get an addiction. Your your decision, your reason for starting out has no bearing on how your mind reacts to it. We have no control over that. If it was, all these big, tough guys who think that's impossible wouldn't have body dysmorphia as powerlifters, as show lifters, as fitness competitors, right? Toughness, testosterone, coolness has no bearing on whether your mind decides that it's going to start having disordered thoughts. So that's the first part. But the second part is Braden getting into racing, because racing is just an equation. There's no feelings involved. And lighter's not always faster.
Oh,
Like, it is in theory, but if the part's weaker, it's not. Like, there are people who their entire occupation and mission on this earth is to come up with lighter compounds, lighter mixtures of metals that are strong enough to resist the forces that racing impose upon them. And
sure.
so it's generally men, when these bros are like, stop being so soft. We just need to be able to say and trust in it that lighter is faster with no associated risk. It's not. Lighter's only faster if lighter is stronger. And in the racing world, you have to come up with new compounds in order to handle the stress at a lighter weight. And so, what is the human body? What's that process? There isn't one, really. There's not a way to lose weight and make sure that everything got stronger as a result. You can't swap out parts. All you can do is hope that all the training you're doing is strengthening you. So even if you took your mind out of it and you had no ability to have any sort of disorder with eating or inappropriate relationship to the weight or to the calories, you can't guarantee that your body can handle it. So lighter is faster until it's not, and we don't know where that point is. So we can't start down that route with that being the leading card that we play. And so that was a big change for me over the years, realizing no, even that statement, lighter is faster, is not correct.
Well, and to take that one step further, now you have to choose a race car and all the parts, and now you have to race it every day without being able to fix it in between.
Right. If you couldn't do
What
that, you choose
what
heavy
part
parts.
correct. And so you talk about putting your running shoes on every day and racing many times a year on a car that you can't fix for all and for sake of conversation,
Yeah.
and you're going to choose durability, and durability isn't frail, right?
That's
And so
enduro racing. That's a thing.
this is a durability competition if you want to progress long term.
Yeah.
And the lightest engine and the lightest parts and the lightest chassis and frame and alloy is not going to allow you to do that day in and day out. You will be on the side of the road
Yep.
laid up.
And you know what they do during these enduro races?
Yeah, they change crap out all the time
Yeah.
in
And
the
in
middle of
ones
it.
where you're not allowed to change certain parts, they get the beefiest version of that part and they say, I don't care if we gain 4 pounds here. We can't afford to break this. Well, you
Exactly.
can't do that as an athlete. You can't pick and choose which of your parts you use. So you just have to not cut out those 4 pounds. The
Hmm.
risk is never worth the reward. Ever. Ever.
It's a great analogy. Leave it to you.
Thank you, Kirk.
You're welcome. I'm glad you
Well,
brought all that up.
so is this where we start, or do we end on stop, or do we end on a positive note here?
How many do we have left?
Oh my goodness. We have
Because I've got 8 minutes is what
okay,
I'm looking at.
over 10. So here's what we're going to do. we're going to end on a positive note. Someone who is not in the top 100 episodes, but someone I wanted to cap on anyway. And so we're going to cap this episode with that.
Well, and I think if people enjoy just being brought back and hearing the lessons learned, just give us feedback that we should continue this, and we can talk through the rest and whatever else
Yeah.
we find in later episodes. But go ahead.
So I'm going to end with someone who should be a shining beacon of hope and happiness for all of us, and that is the one and only Derek Rubus.
Derek Rubus.
Derek Rubus, who is just one of one, as the kids say. There is no one like Derek Rubus. There probably won't be again. And go listen to his entire episode. Picking one thing of his is probably impossible. So I'm just going to pick the concept that we are all excuse makers when it comes to the Derek Rubus test. Have you run a 100-mile week inside your house without the use of a treadmill? From kitchen to bedroom and back for 100 miles. Have you done that? If you haven't done that, but you've made some sort of, I can't get this workout done because you're an excuse maker according to the Derek Rubus scale, which makes me an excuse maker. It makes you an excuse maker.
Mm-hmm.
You were debating over a workout because it was too windy the other day. I was debating over a workout because it was too cold and icy the other day. Derek Rubus ran 100 miles in his kitchen.
When you say it that way,
like what's our excuse? Really, why can't we? What are we waiting on?
I got like a
That was
3
during
year.
dialysis.
That was during chemotherapy.
Is that what it was, chemo?
I have like a 3+ year streak going on Snapchat with Derek Rubus and I Snapchatting each other's faces to each other every single day. I tell Jess, my wife, once a week, I really like, I hate Snapchat. I want to get rid of it. It just throws crap at me. I don't use it whatsoever. For 3 years, I've not deleted that app on my phone so I can Snapchat Derek Rubus every day. I wake up and every day there's a Snapchat from Derek Rubus when he wakes up. So I still see his mug every day. And Derek Rubus got, I'm going to say the largest running fan in the country, at least that we know of. He's, I don't like the term in bed, but in bed with all the pros in the sense where like every pro knows Derek because Derek is a Relentless fan to the point in which he wears their paraphernalia. They've sent him things. He endlessly supports only positively. People like me who on the running scene are a nobody, let's call it, on the professional level, to people who have won Olympic gold medals. He's stood next to them and hung out with them. And Derek has some sort of learning disability. We've never chatted about what that is specifically. And he got diagnosed with colon cancer. And was going through chemo and radiation, I believe surgery, and needed to be by a bathroom. And so Derek was afraid to leave his house. So he ran 100-mile weeks down the hallways so he could hop in the bathroom how many dozens of times during his runs to get his work in. We brought up the idea of getting Derek a treadmill, and we were gonna. Derek didn't want no treadmill. Derek wanted to run the hallways.
Can you imagine that, ladies and gentlemen?
I reached out to Derek to ask if we could get him a treadmill, and he said no.
How many of you, even if you didn't want one, would turn it down? He said, "No, I'm good.
Let us get you a treadmill, Derek."
He's running from kitchen down the hallway to the bedroom and turning around and coming back, and that is his running loop. For what? At his pace, 12, 15 hours a week. We offered him a treadmill and he said, "No, I'm good."
Oh, he's great. I love Derek Rubus. His episode, I remember his audio was a little like, you have to get through the first couple minutes and then you get used to it. There's like a little, I don't remember. It's not perfectly crisp, but then his mom was chiming in the background once in a while to make sure he was not fibbing to us or whatever it was, or reminding him of things. It's just such an endearing episode. We got a big positive response from Derek's episode. That's a good one to end on. I just get all the warm feels when I think of Derek Rubus.
Yeah, it's funny because Derek is a local legend. He's from the Wisconsin area. He's always at the local collegiate indoor meets. Always gets his way into the race and runs the slow heat and works for his PRs. And it was just like so shocking / like relieving and exciting when you realize that he had worked his way into that everywhere. You look, he's with Nick Simmons. You turn around, he's with Matt Centrowitz. He's out in Northern Arizona. Everyone everywhere has Derek
Guy,
Rubin.
yeah, half the time he Snapchats me, he's got an L&L hat on, like a Leo and Lex Young hat, or he's got,
Yeah.
I mean, stuff from Craig Engels. He's like hanging out on the patio with Craig Engels.
We think
It's
he's
interesting.
ours. Like,
he's
he's ours. He
he
came
makes
from us.
everybody feel that way.
Everyone thinks Rubus is one of ours. All right. Everyone everywhere in this country thinks Rubus is one of ours.
He makes me feel special
Yeah.
every day. All right, that's a good one. Go back and listen to Derek Rubus. I think this is where we end this thing. I actually enjoyed. I mean, I haven't looked. I wonder what I would. This was your baby, so to speak, this episode idea. But I haven't looked back, and I can think of a few now as we've talked that you haven't mentioned that have very strong talking points that I think would be fun to sift through. Maybe we can do more of these. I like the idea, Brakken. Way to go!
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, we thanked you last time, but thank you. Thank you for making 500 episodes possible. The number doesn't really matter. It's what it represents. It's that you have stuck with us and supported us for 5 years. And whether you have done that with your downloads or supported us financially through buying t-shirts or running public apparel of some sort, or by signing up for the training plans, all of it added up to us being here 500 episodes later, and we're not going anywhere. So as long as you have a need or an interest for us, we're going to keep doing this thing.
Just like you should do with your training, we've just been dumb enough to keep showing up.
Just plugging away.
and here we are. And yeah, we would not be doing this if we weren't getting listenership and feedback and I don't know, feelings of appreciation. This is a self-fulfilling venture for us, and we're just very lucky that we can also teach along the way. So thank you.
So we could probably do 2 more episodes like this minimum. If you're
Okay.
interested in more walk down memory lane and, fake clip-based shows, let us know and we'll do it. Maybe we'll space it out a little bit, but give us feedback.
All right. We'll see you at 501, guys.
Until next time.